If you're not familiar with American Marketing Association, I'm glad that you're here and hopeful that you'll join future events. And if you are interested, I highly recommend checking out our website, amadetroit.org, getting more information on future events, on resources, and also becoming a member. I became a member a couple years ago, and I really enjoyed it from a professional standpoint. Got to meet some pretty interesting people and learn about some free and some other resources that I use every day. So it's pretty cool. But today we have a very special webinar. There is a topic going around on diversity and inclusion. And today to talk about how to build diverse teams in marketing, we have Darlene King. Darlene has been on webinars with us in the past, so we are very grateful for her. Just a little bit of information about Darlene King. She began her career with the Michigan Diversity Council, a division of the National Diversity Council, in 2015 as an executive director. Her charge is working with corporations and organizations in developing diversity and inclusion initiatives, programs, processes, procedures. She also oversees the growth of the council in the area of business development throughout the entire state of Michigan. And prior to her tenure there, she held the role of Director of Events and Consultative Services Training and Development for all 34 school districts under the Wayne County Regional Education Service Agency for over 10 years. So that's a big task. And her territory covered implementation and execution of all workshops and conferences, as well as maintaining CEUs for teachers and administrators within the Wayne County, Michigan area. And she managed more than 60 consultants, as well as countywide signature events, such as the Teachers Job Fair, the County K-12 Art Fair, and the Cultural Collaborative for Learning. So, needless to say, we cannot find a better person to talk about this topic. So that being said, Darlene, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in today and giving me a little bit of your time to be able to share with you the importance of how to really think about creating diverse teams within marketing. Would love for you all to be able to engage in some conversation around Q&A when we get to that point. The presentation today is probably about 30, 35 minutes tops, if that, because I like to leave an amount of time for questions and answers and engagement from a conversation perspective. So if you have questions that arise as the presentation is going on, I ask that you please enter them into the chat so that they can be monitored, so that when the time comes for us to get to the Q&A, we can really have some open dialogue with regards to your questions around the content as a whole. So I appreciate you. So with that being said, I am going to share my screen because I do have a slide presentation for us today as well. So let's do that. So I need for the host to enable me to be able to share.
Just did it. You should be all set now.
Okay, awesome. There we are. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So are you able to see my screen?
Sure can.
Okay, beautiful. Let me just go in presentation mode. Okay, there we are. So that makes it easy. Okay. So creating diverse teams in marketing departments. So let's just jump right into it. So I'm going to do an introduction, our agenda for today, an introduction. Why diverse teams? What's the importance of diverse teams? Some internal perspectives around diverse teams and the creation and the development of them. Community partners, how they play a role in marketing departments and organizations creating diverse teams and looking at suppliers, exactly how supplier diversity plays such a huge role in marketing department. So let me just give you a little bit of a background about me. My undergrad is in marketing. So I spent several years in a marketing agency, doing a lot of the work that some of you all are doing right now with brand development, content development, commercial creation, creating campaigns, doing a little bit of PR. Spent probably about maybe 10 years or 11 years in that arena in some shape, form, or fashion, prior to me actually getting into Wayne County RESA, even though when I went there, I still had and held a lot of responsibilities around marketing with the work that I did relative to the promotion and development and creation of events for all 34 school districts in the county, as well as marketing plays a huge role in the work that I do today with the council. So I am a person that definitely understands the industry. So I think that that's a plus as a presenter, and presenting the information today is really you all knowing that, yes, I understand the challenges. I understand your pain as well sometimes when it comes to doing this work and doing it well, and exactly what the wins and the gaps are in the industry as a whole. I'm going to give you a little bit of statistics as to why it's so important relative to creating some diverse teams. In 1994, and I'm dating myself now, right? But in 1994, shortly after I graduated from college, I was looking for a role in marketing. I wanted to literally work for a really large marketing firm. I ended up going to a very small Black-owned marketing firm that ended up hiring me. Nonetheless, it was an amazing and great experience. But when I graduated from college young, you're looking to land somewhere with an organization that has a huge name. Not until 2018 did I find out why I had such a hard time in the marketing industry or PR industry, trying to land a job. And the reason that I had such a hard time is because in 1994 to 1995, around that time, there was only 3% of people of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color represented in the marketing and PR industry globally, right? In 2018, from 1994, 95 to 2017, 2018, it went from 3% to 7% representation globally of people of color, Black and Indigenous, that were represented in the marketing and public relations industry from a global perspective. So when we say that there is a gap, it's like the Grand Canyon, right? When we look at those numbers and we look at those statistics as to why it is so hard. But when we look at the changing aspect of society right now, the question becomes, why are diverse teams so important? And we're going to kind of take a look at that, and how do we begin to look at creating opportunities. But the first thing is to really understand what the difference is in impact versus intent. Diverse teams create more innovation, productivity, and profitability. This is really a part of the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I say it is a part because it is only one piece of the business case. The business case within this is a huge, huge component. The question is, or the question becomes, how do we achieve this, right? How do we achieve diverse teams, not just within our marketing departments, but within our organizations as a whole? And the answer is intentionality, right? Impact can't be made if intent is not carried out beyond it being just a thought or just a statement. You've got to put in the work. It's just not gonna fall down on you like rain, right? You literally have to go to the well. And if any of you know anything about a well, it requires a little bit more work, right? And so I grew up in the South. Well, my family, let me say, are migrants from the South. And so as a child, I spent a lot of time in the South. And many of the homes of my family members had wells. And if you've never had well water, it's the best and that you can ever drink on this side of heaven is well water, right? And so it is the coldest. You would think that it was in an ice box for weeks and weeks and weeks. It is the crispest and the clearest. But in order to get that well water, you first have to walk to the well. You have to lower the bucket. You have to wait till you hear it drop. You have to gather the water and you have to spring it back up. Then you have to transfer it from that to the next before you get it into the house to begin to use it for whatever it is that you're going to use it for, either drinking or cooking, right? And so that's very, very different than just going to stand outside and say, you know, I'm just going to wait and let the raindrops hit me where they may. That is the same process for developing and creating diverse teams within your marketing departments. You can't just say that you want to do it. You have to be intentional about doing it, and you have to be able to put in the work in order to achieve the impactful results. It is important to understand why diverse teams and why organizations with diverse teams are much more inclusive, profitable, and productive. Many organizations say that they want diverse teams, but they don't understand what to do with them once they get them, or they don't understand what the impact is on the work within itself. It is a part of the business case. And because the thing about it is gathering diverse teams or having or creating diverse teams requires resources. Let's just be clear. You have to have resources in order to do something different than the status quo to be able to create those diverse teams. If you don't have resources, and whether that's people versus internal, external funding, access to collaborations and opportunities, then you're not going to be able to create diverse teams within your organizations. And so organizations that are more likely to meet or exceed financial targets that have diverse teams, they do that by 2 times more. Organizations that have diverse and inclusive teams are 3 times more likely to be a high performing organization. Organizations that are diverse and inclusive are more likely to be more innovative and agile by 6 times their competitor. And organizations that are diverse and inclusive are more likely to achieve better business results by 8 times more than their competitors. And so most people think, okay, if I create this amazing strategy, or if I hire, you know, the most amazing individuals from the different underrepresented communities, then we are going to be amazing and we did it, right? No, not per se, right? And so you have to be able to increase innovation and the ability to attract and retain top talent, enhance employee engagement, value perceptions within the company, increase and sustainability along with profitability. All of this is wrapped around culture within the organization. So the first thing of how do we create marketing departments that have more diversity or create more diverse teams within our marketing departments, which is embedded within an organization, you first must address the sustainability and the value perception of the organization around its culture in order to retain the top talent. We haven't even recruit the top talent to be able to understand this is how we begin to develop and create opportunities of creating more diverse teams within our organizations. So here's another thing. When you start talking about those diverse teams and you want those diverse teams, you first need to understand what do diverse teams really, really want, right? And what are they looking for? So here's some statistical data for you on what employees are looking for from through a diversity lens. 78% of employees and job seekers say it is important to them to work at an organization that prioritizes diversity and inclusion. Don't think that just because you may think that you're a great and amazing organization, but you don't have a diversity, equity, or an inclusion initiative, program, it is not a part of your mission and vision statement. You don't have a culture that creates an atmosphere of inclusion and belonging. If you have 78% of employees saying that this is a top priority to them relative to the organizations that they go to, if you are not marketing and promoting the fact that you are an organization that values diversity, equity, and inclusion, that it is not a part of your mission and your vision, if it is not something that you are giving resources to, and you are not spreading and sharing that message, then how is it that people are going to know that this is what you are all about? 78% is a huge percentage of employees, especially when by the year 2030, 75% of the workforce will be millennials. So the question becomes, what's important to millennials? When you start looking at how do we create diverse teams, you first must see who's the largest population within our workforce. In 7 years, it will be millennials. They will occupy 75% of the workforce. So the question becomes, what's important to them? What do they value, right? What is attractive to them? Is it pay? Is it culture? Is it community engagement? Is it work-life balance? Is it flexibility? Is it paid time off? Is it incentives? Is it recognition? What's important to the majority of the workforce in order for us to be able to capture them to be teams or to be a part of our internal teams? Let's look at the one underneath it. 80% of American employees want their company to invest more energy into promoting diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So, unlike the very first statement, you have to do more than just have it as a part of your statement, right? And a part of your mission and a part of your vision. You need to be able to ensure that it is embedded within everything that you do internally when you look at how do we create diverse teams within our marketing departments and within our organization. You have to ensure that you are not only talking the talk, but that you are walking the walk as well, and that you are investing within those particular efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion, because you have 80% of the workforce that is interested in that. So it's about supply meeting demand, right? And so we all kind of understand that, right? And so if this is what they're demanding, how do we begin to supply them with what it is that they're looking for in order for us to attract and retain diverse talent that's going to allow us to be able to create these diverse teams? 24% of employees say their company is not doing enough to address DE&I. So if individuals feel like there's not enough that is happening, not that they're not doing anything, but that they're not doing enough in order to make more of an impactful difference. When you understand that 75% of the workforce by the year of 2030, which is just 7 years from now, right, are going to be millennials, and you understand what their characteristics are, what their values are, what their morals are, what their work ethic is, what their makeup is, what makes them stay, what makes them tick, what makes them happy, what's important to them, then that is how you begin to shift the dynamics of what your teams look like relative to the recruitment and the retention, because you're focused on what's going on and what's happening and how the workforce is shifting and how the workforce is developing. 32% of employees and job seekers would not apply to a job at a company where there is a lack of diversity amongst its workforce. So if you already start out and you have no diversity and you want to obtain diverse teams within your organization, you are trying to roll a ball uphill with a very, very short stick, right? And so how do you begin to look at how do you change those dynamics in order to be more impactful so that people will be able to understand who you are as an organization? How do you begin to attract that talent? How do you begin to deliver those messages for them to understand who you are? Because if you're not telling your own story about your ideologies and support and beliefs for DE&I, how are people supposed to know? Through osmosis? They're just not gonna know. You have to be intentional about letting them know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, then they sure aren't gonna know who you are. And so then that's gonna cause them to bypass you and just go on to the very next. So these are some really, really amazing statistics around what individuals are thinking about relative to being a part of organizations and departments when it comes to creating and developing diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies and initiatives, and being able to retain and recruit diverse talent and teams within your organization. Let's talk about some of the ways in which you can look at and create diverse teams. Of course, there's the internal efforts, right? And so when you begin to think about who's in my department, right? What are the opportunities that are available within my department when it comes to job fulfillment or position fulfillment. And if you look around or you think in your mind, and you think about your own marketing team that you have, if it is a very homogeneous group, then the question becomes, what have you or have not you done when it comes to actually hiring that particular talent that may have been presented before you in order for you to hire? Was it the fact that they didn't have all and check all of the boxes per se relative to the job description within itself, right? And so if they don't check all of the boxes, then we automatically don't look at how are we going to look at transferable skills, or how do we look at time spent, or how do we look at is a degree really required to do this role, right? There's a multiplicity of things to be able to look at relative to how are we internally hiring? How are we internally developing our job roles and job descriptions? How are we internally looking at how we are selecting our candidates to interview? How are we internally looking at whether or not we have a diverse interview team that we've developed? How are we looking at that from an internal perspective? So that's one aspect to be able to look at. Another aspect when you start thinking about your internal efforts is if you don't have a diverse department, what other departments may have individuals that identify under the dimensions of diversity that we can create committees and or think tanks to be able to draw in the perspectives of others that meet the dimensions of diversity as we're working on our programs and our projects throughout the year. Even though you may not necessarily have it within your own department, you need to begin to look outside of your departments and say, what else is available to me internally that meets the dimensions of diversity, that's going to offer me a different perspective, that's going to bring a different level of a thought leader within the process, that's going to give us some different perspectives as well as we begin to work on this campaign or this branding or this project for this particular client. How do we begin to look at those internal components as well? And it's not about cherry picking, or it is not, I don't want you to look at it through the lens of that I am singling out just those individuals just because they are, but it is about ensuring that you have their perspective so that you can better meet the needs of the client. And so I think it is very important for you to be honest about that when you begin to look outside of your departments, if they are non-diverse, to say, hey, and be very transparent. We don't have a diverse department because, you know, it's kind of like the obvious needs no support, but it is also important to be able to address the obvious as well at the same time. We don't have a diverse department, and we know that we need to do better, and we are working on that. But in the meantime, we value you as an employee, and we value the work that you do and your perspectives that you have. And we were wondering if you would support us in lending yourself to us as a think tank as we work on this project and we work on this program. Honesty and transparency always gets you more, because that lets people feel like they are valued and want to be a part of the process opposed to being singled out just because they represent a specific dimension of diversity. Or if you're working on a campaign for a client and say it is around the ability or disability community, then you want to ensure that you are not offending any others or you're offending your clients. So if there are individuals within your organization that you know that identify as an individual with a disability or ability, then you use the exact same approach, is being honest and transparent as to why, because we do not want to offend you and we don't want to offend anyone else that's a part of the disability community, and your voice is valued and needed. And so would you, that's the way that you incorporate the internal individuals within the organization that may not necessarily be a part of your department as a whole, to be able to create some other perspectives around having and creating and developing diverse teams, until you are able to literally hire and bring on individuals that are a part of your diverse teams from an employee perspective. External partners and collaborations. Who are they? Oftentimes we spend so much time head down, blinders on, doing the work that we do, right? And our plates are already overflowing. And we oftentimes miss out on the beauty of being able to tap into external partners and external collaborators. And when I say external partners and external collaborators, you have a multiplicity of organizations and individuals at your fingertips that we oftentimes miss. Let's take AMA of Detroit, for example, right? So you know that they are an association relative to marketing, PR individuals, and this is what they focus on. And so how do you begin to tap into an organization or a partner like AMA to say, hey, we have this huge campaign. We would love the perspectives of some of your members to let us know what their thoughts are and what they think, because we, at this point in time, we haven't done a really great job of creating our own internal diverse teams. How about tapping into some of the Chamber of Commerce that we have here in Michigan? Michigan is rich with a multiplicity of Chamber of Commerce that represents multiple dimensions of diversity. You have the Black and African American Chamber of Commerce. You have the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. You have the Asian American Pacific Islander Chamber of Commerce. You have the Arab American Chamber of Commerce. We have a Chamber of Commerce, the Jewish American Chamber of Commerce. We have a Chamber of Commerce for every underrepresented population here in Michigan that you can think of. That is what they are here for. They are here to be able to support and help other external entities when it comes to their specific group and population of individuals that they serve. If you are working on a campaign, a project, a program, or you're trying to create and obtain the perspectives, approval, and or support from diverse individuals, then how are you looking to partner with or create relationships with the multiplicity of chambers of commerce that you have externally in order to be able to do that? How are you looking at working with, if you're working on a campaign, let's just say it is around supporting, individuals for, say, for example, Gardner White. I know Gardner White right now is doing a huge campaign of feeding families during the holidays, right? And so if Gardner White is your partner and you have absolutely no clue on what the food scarcity is, where the food deserts are, what's the impact on the numbers, it's more important to not just do Google, but how about partnering with a Forgotten Harvest or a Gleaners or a Focus Hope to say, hey, we would love to tap into your organization and for you to help us as we begin to look at how we support our client in this arena. Can you provide us with some statistics and data and numbers around these particular groups? And what's your perspective on what's the best way to support? We forget about the spirit of collaboration and the value of collaboration because we are so busy in our own silos doing the work that we do internally that we forget about the importance of external collaborations that gives us the ability to obtain different views and perspectives from diverse groups that are enriched in areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion because of who they are and or who they represent. So let's not forget about the importance of partners and collaborators externally. Last but not least, the supply chain is a huge missed opportunity for us when we think about how do we create diverse teams, right? And how do we create opportunities to be better and to be that cutting edge or create that cutting edge opportunity for our clients? You can do that so very well through the supply chain. Who are your vendors, right? What type of vendors do you have? What dimensions of diversity do they represent that they may have that particular perspective around that particular client that you are serving or that next great thing that you are project managing and or developing? Tapping into supplier diversity and having a diverse set of suppliers is a huge missed opportunity for marketing departments because it is so easy to just open up, and I'm really dating myself because I'm gonna use this term, Rolodex, when we know we don't even use a Rolodex anymore. I don't even know where people keep their contacts at, in your cell phone or wherever you keep them at, right? And so it is so easy to do, to go to the go-to, right? This is who we've always used. Or this is, they've been around for years, or they've been working with us forever. Yeah, they probably have, and you're getting the same thing too, right? We miss out on a huge opportunities through supply chain. Whether that's through videographers, whether that's through printers, whether that's through promotional materials and items and tchotchkes, whether that's through venues, whatever the case may be, for us to create the campaigns that we want to create to advance this work and support the work that we're working on. We miss out on the opportunity by not tapping into diversified suppliers that will definitely bring you a different and fresh perspective. So when you think about it at the beginning and the end of the day, it is about, if we don't have diverse teams internally, and until we're able to get to that point by going back to the business case and creating those plans and strategies and creating that messaging, what other external entities can we tap into, or other internal entities can we tap into, or supply chain opportunities and vendors that we can partner with to ensure that we are getting a difference of perspective in thought in order to create those diverse teams as a whole. Because when you look at a project for a client, you look at it as a project. You don't look at it as a piece of a project. It's just one entity within itself. You just have multiple pieces within that helps create the delivery of that final piece of product. Last but not least, how do we get there, right? And so when you think about the ROI, what is it going to bring? It's going to bring you more profits, right? It's going to give you the ability to have greater teams when you begin to think outside of the box of how we create the teams, outside of just hiring individuals that may meet the dimensions of diversity. It's going to give you an ability to have better brand development, not just for yourself as an organization and your department, but also for your clients. What's some of the niche market components, right? And so, you're looking for external resources. Never underestimate the power of collaboration and partnership. Develop those community partners, and broaden the view that you have on, who and what your partners really, really look like at the beginning and the end of the day. When you think about the supply chain, who are your suppliers, and exactly how intentional are you around the suppliers that you use? Are you using the same people that you've used for 20 or 30 years or 10 years? Or are you looking at how to diversify those individuals? When you couple all of these components together, it gives you that opportunity to have the difference of perspectives, to have a greater outreach and a greater impact. It allows you to diversify the project and to diversify the individuals that you work with until you're able to develop those internal diverse teams. And so with that being said, I am going to stop sharing. I hope that what you've heard today helps you think about and think outside of the box around how you create some of your diverse teams. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over and see if there are any questions in the chat or Q&A.
All right. Well, thank you for that very insightful presentation. Like I said, I know this is a very hot topic, and I find myself asking questions often. And I know I try to be a resource, and sometimes I don't have the answer. So it's always nice to have these kind of discussions and get this kind of insight on ways to help.
Yeah.
We do have some questions in the Q&A. Looks like Matt has a question. Matt says, thank you for the great presentation. I'm wondering if you can expand your thoughts for a small firm. We work with a lot of companies that are small, micro enterprises with less than 10 employees. What are strategies and tactics that they can employ to showcase their investment in diversity?
Wow. It's about, so you're asking the question, Matt, relative to the clients that you serve that are very small organizations, and what can they do to show that they are vested in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Am I understanding that right?
That's how I took it, yes.
Yes, okay. And so the thing is, it's not about the size, right? It's not about, you could be 5 employees, you could be, 3 employees. It's not about the size of the employee population, but it's about the impact of the work, right? Mm-hmm. And it's about the engagement that they are engaging in. And like anything else, how are they telling their story? How are they telling their story about who they work with? Mm-hmm. Right? How are they telling their story about who their clients are, right? The campaigns that they work on. And so even though they may not necessarily be a really large organization as a whole, what impact are they making relative to diversity, equity, and inclusion through the products and services or clients that they support, through the initiatives that they help, through the brand development that they help, that may impact individuals within the dimensions of diversity. So it's about having the ability to tell a great story and to be able to display that great story, whether it's on a website, whether it's through a press release, whether it's through, pitch opportunities when you're pitching other clients to talk about, we were the agency of choice that was responsible for working on this and this and this and this, that it literally lays out to other individuals that you or other potential clients that diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, whatever they may look like, are important to you and that you are not afraid to address and or support. So that would be my best recommendation on how small agencies have the ability to do that.
Awesome. We have another question that came in is there a preferred opening to speaking with the various chambers you spoke about to make a connection?
No, there isn't. I mean, it's really just about, reaching out to the executive directors of these chambers and just letting them know who you are. If you are from, if I am, say I'm AMA agency in Detroit, and our efforts are to really be intentional around our diversity, equity, and inclusion, needs and initiatives. And we are looking for external partners that can be, think tanks or thought partners, with us, that if we need support, around, ethical issues or conversations or cultural conversations and understanding, is there resources or is there someone that we can lean on in your organization to connect with? They're going to be like, yes. And you just have to be honest as to why, instead of beating around the bush. It's like, hey, this is who we are. And we know that this is what we're trying to do. They are going to welcome that because we are all in this work together. It takes all of us. And so it's just about being very honest and transparent about what you're looking for, and the support that you need, and the intentionality for your agency and your organization to be more impactful. And I promise you, you're going to be welcomed with open arms, and they're going to be able to support you in all areas.
Awesome. Another question we have is, how do you begin with cultivating supplier diversity? If we're analyzing possible PR agencies or marketing agencies, are we looking at staff ratio, projects they've done, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're looking at yes and yes. Okay, you're looking at it all, right? And so it's about creating what is known now and is more prevalent as a diversity questionnaire. Mm-hmm. That diversity questionnaire can be a little invasive, but it is necessary, mm-hmm. right? And the questions that are on diversity questionnaires, they vary to how many employees do you have? How many dimensions of diversity, do you meet? And dimensions of diversity can be race, ethnicity, class, socioeconomic, sexual orientation, ability, disability. It can be a multiplicity of those things, right? And we just refer to them as the dimensions of diversity. How many clients have you served that meet diversity requirements and standards, and list what those are for you. And so it's called a diversity questionnaire. That is the very first thing that your amazing, robust organizations like a AAA, a DTE, even a Detroit Public Television, they all have diversity questionnaires, which are becoming to be more of the standard, because even now for organizations that are applying for federal grant, federal funding, or even funding through philanthropic departments like the DTE Foundation or the Kellogg's Foundation, or those types of foundations, they're giving organizations diversity questionnaires, and they're creating to ensure that they are being equitable in their selection of the suppliers that they use. And also it holds the vendor accountable to take a look at their own internal diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Because if they continue to lose out on opportunities because they can't meet diversity, equity, and inclusion numbers with some basic questions through a DE&I questionnaire, then that's going to make them say, I may need to start looking at my own internal DE&I efforts, and shifting that and making it a priority. So it's about that. And so I'm sure that you can either Google, diversity questionnaires, and you can find out about it. And if you have some really large clients, that have supplier diversity as a part of their organization, just ask to connect with their supplier diversity director or manager and say, hey, would you mind sharing with me your supplier diversity questionnaire? So then you're able to see exactly what type of questions are being asked of them.
Gotcha. And I have a question. I've heard of certain organizations that will almost take it a step further, and instead of applying this to the hiring process, they go a little deeper. They invest in neighborhoods, or they invest in high school students or college kids and educating them on certain job opportunities or certain skills. I used to work with an orthopedic group, and the group was just shy of 50 physicians, but there were only 2 women. And I remember I would help them with an event where they brought in young girls who were in high school and kind of showed them what they would do, and what a day in the life kind of looked like for them as an orthopedic surgeon. Do you think that, and for lack of a better way of putting it, responsibility falls on corporations or companies? And have you seen anything like that, where people are investing a little bit lower than the hiring level? Maybe, like I said, neighborhoods or people who are in school. Have you seen any of those kind of examples? I feel like I don't see enough of that now. I really do want to see that and invest in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When we think about the Great Resignation, right, that we're in, think about the reality that in 7 years, 75% of the workforce are going to be millennials, and the generation coming behind that is Gen Z, and the generation behind Gen Z is the alpha generation, right? Okay. And think about that. That means that your baby boomers, which is the generation before myself, because I'm a Gen Xer, will be retiring now. Will be gone. And so if companies don't begin to reach back and tap into talent beyond higher ed, college and university levels, then they're going to be hard pressed to find talent to work within their organizations, because as the generations move down, their priorities shift and change. Gen Z generation is not interested in working for any of you on this call or myself. Okay. Are not interested in coming to work for you. Okay. Let's be real, because they are interested in entrepreneurship, period. So if you want to be able to continue to have an increase in pipeline, an increase in talent, and so that your industry won't die down, or the talent for your industry, you have to be able to reach back. Boy Scouts of America has an amazing program around high school students, specifically young men. And so if any of you are interested, reach out to the people at AMA, and I can provide that information for you, to the contact people for the Boy Scouts of Southeast Michigan, who handles that program. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's called the Explorer program, but it is awesome. But it gives them the opportunity to mentor a class of boys and gives them the ability to come in and do job shadowing. And they do all of the logistics. It's just a matter of having companies and organizations be able to sponsor either 1 or 2 students or 10 or 15 students throughout their 4 years of high school or their 3 years of high school, depending on, how far they go. in order to be able to get them introduced to a multiplicity of industries so that when they do go to college, they then can follow them through. So you're absolutely right. The time of reaching back beyond college and going into the high school arena is so very, very vital to the success of increasing the pipeline for talent in the up and coming years.
So great to hear. All right, I think we have gone through all the questions and we are exactly at 1 o'clock. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Darlene, thank you again for sharing your insight on this topic. We really appreciate it. And then thank everyone for joining. You guys have a good rest of your afternoon. Thanks again, Darlene.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.